the second major question you want to ask is, you've looked at the list, you've tried to do a little digging as to where it came from. Now you want to ask, how did those particular companies make the list? Why are they on there? Whoever put it together, government agency, a ministry, a nonprofit, or an individual person like myself, why did they put those particular companies on the list? So the list that has floated around before, where it's just somebody's handwritten, a list of jobs like Sears or Kmart or something like that. If the companies who were on that list are there because maybe somebody who got out of prison got a job at Kmart or Sears, and then they wrote their homeboy back and told him, hey, I got a job at Sears, right? So, because I know a couple of guys I was in prison with who got jobs at Sears. Well, that doesn't mean that Sears has a policy that allows for the hiring of people with felonies, right? Just because somebody knows somebody who got a job at this particular location, it doesn't mean that that company is felony friendly. It could just mean that whoever got the job there just got like the homeboy hookup, or maybe they're related to the manager or something, or maybe they just had a really outstanding interview and the manager decided to make an exception in that person's case. So the point here is, when you're looking at how those companies got on the list, if there's a company on the list, just because it has a history of hiring people with felonies, that doesn't necessarily mean they're a felony-friendly employer. If what we mean by felony-friendly employer is, an employer who has a policy that allows for people with convictions, then you're not going to find very many. If what we mean by, employers who have hired, people with felonies in the past, then you might find a lot more. But it doesn't mean that they should be considered felony-friendly. There are a number of reasons that somebody could have gotten that job. Another thing that I've seen, just as recently as last month, somebody said that they got hired and then they were promptly let go because the background check came in. So this happens sometimes and it's very frustrating. All right, so you'll go into a job, they ask you on an application, have you been convicted of felonies? You say yes, go through the interview, you even talk with the person interviewing you about the fact that you've been to prison or you have felonies, and they go ahead and hire you. And then later on, it could be weeks or it could be several months, whoever did the background check kicks it back to the manager and they have to let you go. And usually the issue is not because the hiring manager doesn't want you to work there. It's because the hiring manager is answering to other superiors and they have some kind of policy that prevents them from hiring people with a criminal background. There was a miscommunication between either the manager and human resources or his or her superiors, or maybe the manager just thought that they could, work their magic and make an exception for this person and that HR or the superiors would understand, and it didn't work out like that. So I've seen that happen a number of times in the past. Now, one time where it happened, it was Starbucks, as a matter of fact. The guy was working at Starbucks. He was there for 3 months. I want to say it was 3 months. Told him on the application, talked to the manager in the interview. He was hired. And after 3 months, the manager got a notice from Human Resources that he had to be let go because they weren't going to allow somebody with either his felony or his particular conviction. The manager at that time told my friend, don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. So he went to his own superiors and spoke on behalf of the friend of mine who was employed there. And it worked and he was okay. But the reason was because there were 3 months worth of his work ethics that the manager had observed and was willing to go to bat for them. So it wasn't like at that time, and I'm pretty sure the policy has changed now, but it wasn't like at that time they were in the business of hiring people with felonies. In fact, they weren't. But for whatever reason, there was a disconnect between Human Resources and the manager's superiors and that hiring manager. I've seen that happen repeatedly. So again, you might have heard, so-and-so got out and got a job with this company, and then for whatever reason, that company gets put on one of these lists, and it is inaccurate. It is not true that that company is felony friendly at all. Another example was Toyota. So Toyota actually came into the prison, one of the prisons that I work in, and wanted to help with our program getting a limited internet access to some of our students because they wanted our students to be able to take the Toyota certification test for automotive mechanics. So if you're an automotive technician, then you have to take the ASE certification, but Toyota has their own specific certification that they wanted, and they wanted our automotive technician students to be able to have the Toyota certification, which was excellent, right? So when they get out, they're not just certified as automotive technicians, but they have this additional certification with Toyota. So because I've seen so many weird scenarios in the past, I'm walking with the representatives from Toyota, and I ask, so does this mean that Toyota is a felony-friendly employer? Which, if you thought that, you would be reasonable. You would be a totally rational person if you thought that, because here are these regional representatives from this large, automotive manufacturing company wanting to go out of their way to help our students get certified for that company. So it's reasonable for you to think, well, then I guess Toyota is felony friendly. And his answer was no. But then he began to explain they didn't have a policy that either restricted people with felonies or accepted them. It was silent on the issue. They let the regional managers decide for themselves, or a particular dealership decide for themselves. So if you got out and you went to work at a dealership who was in Houston and you were able to get hired on, that doesn't mean you're going to be able to get hired on at the dealership right down the street, because those are two different owners and they have the authority to decide whether or not they want to hire someone with a felony. So it wasn't like the company itself had a policy and made them felony friendly. It was just that some of the regional managers were open to it. They had a history of hiring people, and so that's why they were there. But you can easily see, if I hadn't asked that question, I would go back to my office and I'd put on my felony friendly spreadsheet Toyota. And I did, but I qualified it, right? If I hadn't qualified it, and I'd have just said, Toyota is a felony friendly employer, and then people getting out in, Alabama and North Dakota who went to Toyota, and then they were discouraged when they found out that the particular dealership or the particular factory that they went to didn't hire people with felonies. And then you'd be pissed off at me or some other list because it said Toyota was a felony friendly employer, and it was inaccurate. So why did the companies get on the list? Just because somebody with a felony or criminal background has worked there before doesn't mean that they are a felony-friendly employer. They could have got the job and then HR came back and said, let them go, and they had to get let go. They could have got the job because they're related or good friends with the hiring manager. They could have got the job because they had an exceptional interview and they decided to make an exception. Or they could have got a job there because that particular manager was okay with hiring felons, but that doesn't mean the next dealership is. So I saw that when I went to a job fair. It was the same thing for a lot of fast food places and gas stations in particular. Whenever I go to these job fairs, I'm not looking for the job. I'm looking for jobs for other people. And so I always ask them these questions. And a lot of the fast food places or gas stations, they would be at these second chance job fairs. And I would say, so what kind of felonies do you not accept or whatever? And a lot of them would say, well, it's not a company policy of ours. It's just that we allow each individual manager to make the decision for themselves. Here's another example. So in Houston, before COVID, I used to go to second chance job fairs all over Texas: Austin, San Antonio, Dallas, Fort Worth, Houston, everywhere. COVID, they kind of fizzled out pretty bad and haven't regained a lot of their consistency across the state of Texas. But I would go to these job fairs, and the Houston one in particular, when I would go, there would be employers there who did not accept people with felonies, which is weird. Again, just like with Toyota, if you go to a job fair that says something like second chance job fair, then it's safe for you to assume that all the employers in there are hiring people with felonies or a criminal background at least. But you would be incorrect. Because again, I'd go to this job fair and ask this. So for example, the fire department would be there, or TSA, the airport, representatives from the airport would be at the job fair. And those two in particular, I went up to them and I was like, because I have a friend who's a paramedic, and I said, are you all hiring people with felonies? And they just sort of, laughed and they said no. And I said, well, why are you here? It's because they were told to be there. So representatives from some of these large agencies just were told to go make an appearance, set up a table with brochures and everything at this event. But they didn't have a policy that was allowing for people with felonies to get hired. They're just there for, I don't know, image, the public's good. I'm not really sure why they were there, but they were told to be there. Well, here's the thing. If you go right now online and you look up the website for like Houston Second Chance Job Fair, the last one was in 2019, or maybe, it was 2019. If you go to that job site, it'll tell you a list of vendors, and the fire department and the TSA, airport authorities, will be listed on that site. So again, if you're online, or your partner's online, your family, your friends are online, and they go to like this Houston Second Chance Job Fair list, and it says this was a job fair for people with felonies or criminal backgrounds, and then it gives you the list online of all the vendors, that was all the people that showed up, you would be right or safe, rational, reasonable to assume that list of people are felony friendly. You would be wrong, because those people showed up there for political reasons, not because they were actually, helping anybody with a felony. The other thing is that because I went to prison for felonies and everybody I work with is in prison for felonies, I don't think about misdemeanors. But there were some companies at these job fairs, and they're not hiring people who have a felony background. They're only hiring people with misdemeanors. Well, this is just where I'm, short-sighted or, narrow-minded about the issue. I never even thought about the fact that employers would bar somebody with misdemeanor crimes. It just never even occurred to me until this one particular company told me that. They're like, nah, if you have a felony, it doesn't matter if it's a 4th degree, 3rd, 2nd, 1st, it doesn't matter. We're only hiring people with misdemeanors, and only certain kinds of misdemeanors. So again, if you look at that list, you're going to see people who are there and they are not hiring anyone with a criminal background. And then you might also see people there who are hiring only people who have a misdemeanor background. All right. So how did the companies get on whatever list you're looking at, whether it's a government list, a nonprofit, a ministry list, or something like, ranker.com? Why are those particular companies on the list? What was the eligibility criteria to get on the list?